My name is Cole Allen, and today we're going to be talking about genetic modification, the cost and ethics. Next slide, please. All right, so before we get into it, has anybody ever had any issues in their family, like medical history, or where just the bill was really, really expensive? Raise of hands. Yeah, we've all been through that. It sucks, right? It stinks. So the main problem today is that genetic modification, and specifically gene therapy, is kind of an emergent form of like healthcare, but it's very expensive and it's not very accessible. And I think as all like computer science majors in this class, we all would like innovative technology to be like as readily available as possible, just so it can help like the people who need it the most. Next slide, please. All right, so what is genetic modification? In simple terms, genetic modification is literally modifying the genes. So that could be like GMOs. If anybody's familiar with like CRISPR technology, that is when they like literally copy and paste your genetic sequence to kind of like change stuff out. And it's super precise, it's super like revolutionary, and it's really impressive. Next slide, please. All right, so the cost of treatment at the moment is ridiculous. If you look at some of the examples, especially Zolgensma, that is a one-time treatment for spinal muscular atrophy, and it comes up to $2.1 million. That is like a one-time treatment, and you're not even sure if it's going to be as effective as you think it is. Yeah?
Do health insurance cover those type of costs?
We are actually going to be getting into that. All right, next slide, please. So there are some causes with the exclusivity of genetic therapy. One of them is that because of a lot of long-term effects of gene therapy, there is a long development period for testing and improving gene therapy treatments. So as it stays in that cycle for a long time, more money gets sunk into like the funding and development of it. So a lot of like pharmaceutical agencies kind of use that to explain why their treatment is so expensive. Zolgensma specifically, I believe the company that developed that is Norvantis, and the CEO said that the 2.1 million cost was justified because it was so revolutionary and so life-changing, and that was his only reason. Next slide, please. So there are a lot of ethical concerns with gene therapy, and that also keeps it in its development cycle for a long time. One of them is informed consent. Because of the long potential impacts of gene therapy, there are like a lot of issues with informed consent where people argue that even the doctor is not fully informed on the side effects of modifying your genes, so they cannot accurately warn you of the like potential side effects that may cause, and then that's kind of an ethical concern, because if you're getting a treatment for anything, you need to like be completely aware of the side effects, because I believe it was Chelsea Gelsinger was one of like the first test subjects in a clinical trial for gene therapy, and he had an unknown reaction to it, and he died 4 days later. And that was like a big like controversy. This was back in like 2001, I think. So that was very early on. Next slide. So there's also a lot of like societal concerns with gene therapy. Genetic modification currently has a high cost. So that's like impacting who has like availability to it. And a lot of people are concerned that with the removal of like potential genetic diseases and like chronic illnesses, that there is going to be not even just like a class disparity between social classes, but also one that exists on like the genetic level. So that's like a huge concern. And then there's also the issue of what if people aren't even sick and they're using this technology to just enhance like their abilities, like better stamina, better strength, making yourself taller, stuff like that. And then we can go to the next slide. And this is the big one. This is the big can of worms right here, is designer babies. Is anybody familiar with that concept? Yeah, that's been like a big one recently. It's just the concept of when you have an unborn embryo, you modify their genes and you add stuff in and take stuff out. So you have like your baby as like you specifically want them to be. And there's actually a kind of troubling theory that goes into that, is that is kind of carried by eugenics, where certain people believe certain traits are desirable and the other traits should be breeded out. So the whole designer baby debacle kind of like reinforces that, and that makes it more like readily available. So a lot of people are like pretty worried about that. Next slide. So if gene therapy is so expensive because of the long development cycle, should we like deregulate all of, like the requirements for it? Absolutely not. I'm hoping that none of you think we should do that, considering all the ethical dilemmas we just went through. Those regulations are absolutely necessary. So I propose that instead of deregulating, the approval for genetic therapy, that we target something else. All right, can you go to the next slide? So right now, who is harmed and who is benefited by the current disparity of like gene therapy? So right now, working class people, your average Joe, those who suffer from genetic disorders, and those with chronic illnesses, they're all currently harmed because they usually have to take more expensive over time treatments for like chronic illnesses and especially genetic disorders. It can be very debilitating, and they might even, because they can't afford like a one-time payment, they have to take like multiple payments yearly that accrue to more than the one-time payment would be. But who benefits? Wealthy people benefit. They have access to all of this stuff pretty handedly. And those who suffer from genetic disorders still benefit from this, because if the technology is out there, even if you can't readily access it, it still benefits you in some way, because it's better for that stuff to be developed than not to be developed. And obviously, pharmaceutical businesses, they make big bucks from like all these like revolutionary technologies. So, next slide. So, what are some solutions? We have the price caps on treatments and medications. I think recently, in the last presidential administration, we capped the price on insulin. That was a game changer. That was pretty big. So I think more stuff to kind of like more to regulate the privatization of, the pharmaceutical industry, that would just apply to gene therapy as well. Government funding and nonprofits. If we have more just federal money going into the research, and like nonprofit organizations, making money and like volunteering, put work into these development groups, then it might take less pressure off of pharmaceutical agencies to price their medications so high. This one's probably my favorite. Pay for performance healthcare plans. This is where we're going back into that, where for those like one-time payments, if that treatment doesn't meet your expectations, you do not have to pay for the full price of it, and you might even receive refunds for it. And then we have a restriction on patents. If the length of patents aren't so long, once they expire, more generic versions of these treatments would become more available. Does anybody know who developed the polio vaccine? I think it was like Jason Salve. I believe that was his name. And when he developed the vaccine, he did not put a patent on it. He wanted it to be as free and readily accessible as possible. He did not want to earn a profit from it because it was such a game-changing, revolutionary vaccine. And then expanding the research field, that is just us putting more people into that field, so it is more efficient without having to take away the regulations that are required for it. Next slide. So what is the impact of these changes? So on the micro level, obviously more people will have access to these treatments and these drugs. More people wouldn't have to deal with genetic disorders, which usually don't have a lot of treatments available. And then people won't have to deal with chronic illnesses. And then on the macro level, I think a big game changer is if these medications are more cheap, we can bring them out to more developing countries and stuff where there's like a lot of sickness, a lot of like illness, and just improve the life expectancy just everywhere year round. Next slide. All right, and this is where you guys can find me. There's my email, my LinkedIn, and if you want to talk to me on Discord, there is my handle. Alrighty, and you can, next slide. And those are my references. Thank you guys.